there was nothing there. Even our doctor really didn't recognize that there were problems, whereas nowadays you have early childhood intervention right away, but we didn't. So we didn't really know, it was our first child, we didn't know anything was wrong. Who knew? And I happened to see an article in the Richmond paper about a couple who had a child who was brain damaged, and they had gone to Philadelphia to see this special program that was offered at that time for brain damaged children. And we talked to this couple, and that's how we got started going to Philadelphia for a very intensive, how would you describe it? It's a very intensive hands-on program to work with the children. There were a few controversial parts of the program. It was very intensive, home-based. So you came back home and you needed volunteers, so we had volunteers in our home.
Well, when I was told that my son had CP, and I said, what does that mean? Well, he may not walk until he starts to school. I said, is there anything we can do between now and then? Oh no, just wait and see. Well, it became evident to us as a family that we felt, anyway, that we should be doing something with Joey as he grew that would keep him stimulated. And someone told me that the Lybrooks had a son who had CP. So my first destination was to go visit Bill and Janet to see what CP looked like at age 4. And we learned about the program that Tony was on, got acquainted with a doctor and his wife in Middletown. They had a son who was on the program, and the program was the Doman Delicato program, and headquarters were at that time in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And they were very happy to have someone as young as Joey, because he was only a few months old at that time, and they thought it would be more helpful to start early with the PT, with the physical therapy. So our first trip to Philadelphia was with Joey, and then we sat through 5 days of lectures in auditoriums that they kept their room temperature about 50 so that no parent went to sleep. And you didn't. And we would have to set aside a room for that designated purpose, do the patterning and the programming that would be given to us to give for our individual children. And they said, you can find room, even if you have to make a garage into a room. You do have room in your house, each one of you, and there may have been 50 or 60 couples there with children, but you will make room for this program. And we came home and we used our dining room, and we got volunteers to come in and set up a program 5 days a week for individuals, volunteers to come in and help. And one of the things that they had us do in the Philadelphia Institutes was take a plastic mask that had a drawstring in it and put it around the child's nose and mouth and behind the head. The child was to breathe into this mask for 60 seconds, 1 minute, and that had to be done 30 times a day.
And just by the time Scott was born, that would have been in 68. And I think we realized with some of our other friends and the children they had that were born about the same time, we knew that something wasn't quite right with Scott. He wasn't sitting up like our friends' kids and all that. So we did not have to go to Philadelphia. My pediatrician was not much help because he just said to not get attached to Scott, and he knew of a nice home, and I can't remember, it was Georgia, Alabama, something like that. So we just quit going to him. There was a center set up in Cincinnati, and that's where we got the orientation and set up a home room with all the equipment and everything, and had volunteers come in. That made it a little easier for me because you had that outside contact all the time, and you had people coming in to talk to, and so I think that helped me a lot. You weren't just in the house thinking, what am I going to do? So,
yeah, we made about 3 trips, I think, to Philadelphia for reappraisals and so forth, changed the program as Joey matured. And each time we came home, the volunteers had come in while we were gone and cleaned the house.
I never had that.
I don't think I did
Which
either.
was okay.
I could use that now.
About that time, we were each getting our fill of doing that programming in our own home.
Stressful.
Hoping to be able to get a center started, and it seemed right only to do it in Eaton, county seat, where we could take the children there and not have to have the volunteers come in and do the program in our own home every day. I remember Judge Zico lived right across from my grandparents there at North Beach Street, and he was a member of the Presbyterian Church, and he said he thought that we could rent the basement of the church for that program 5 days a week. And that was how we got the first center started. And then after we'd been doing that, I don't know, what, 2 or 3 years, that we decided that we needed to have our own place. So we had raised money and bought the church, and we needed the funding of the county board at that time. And I contacted someone in the State Department who was going to come down and meet with the county board and tell them why they needed to support the training center, and that was because they didn't have anything to offer. They were supposed to be providing a service for these individuals, and they weren't. They were only providing a service for those who were school age and could walk and talk and feed themselves. Those with physical handicaps weren't eligible. At that time then, I tried to solicit the names of families in the county that needed help with their children, and there were quite a few. And Mrs. Emery came down and told the board in no uncertain terms that if they didn't have something better to offer, then she told them that they should support our program, and they did.
And then for our training center too, instead of us going to Cincinnati or any place else for evaluations, there's usually a yearly evaluation. We had a lady, and I do not remember how we got with her, Miriam Bender. She would come to the training center building itself, and she would evaluate each child that was there.
I remember going into town one time, my husband was driving, and we were going into Eaton and going by the children's home, and I can remember telling him that I just felt like I could not do anything but cry all the time because Joey was so handicapped and there wasn't really a whole lot of hope for him. And his answer to me, and I always thought it was a great answer, was, Joey wouldn't want you to feel that sad. And Joey wouldn't.
No.
Joey wouldn't want me to feel that sad about his condition. Joey was okay with who he was. The biggest problem was him not being able to speak. He could point to things, but I had, if it was outside the room he was in, I had no idea what he was trying to tell me. So it was a guesswork all the time. And I prayed that if I ever had another child like Joey, at least they could talk. And if you know Jessica, she's just like Joey with
Your
one
prayers were
exception.
answered.
She talks all the time. So
I think at first, especially, it was discouraging, but then the program, the Philadelphia program, gave us a lot of hope. And that was one of the criticisms of it, was that it gave you false hope, because you envisioned at that point, or at least I did, that he was going to sit up and he was going to walk and he was going to talk and function somewhat normally. I remember thinking, okay, I can handle having a child who's physically handicapped, but mentally retarded, I just can't deal with that. And there's that stigma we've talked about mental retardation. No matter how much you did, we began to realize that he's not going to walk, he's not going to sit up. we were happy the day he could grasp an object in his hand. So you grow with that. You become used to it, and then you look at as many positive things as you can. Okay, I'm going to tell you something from a very selfish point of view. In the early years, you're just so involved, and it's so time consuming. And we've had 2 other children by then. I think the best thing that ever happened was I felt like I could turn him over to someone else, at least during the day, who was not going to just take care of him physically, but stimulate him. And of course, when he was at the training center, many different things went on. Eye exercises, we did flashcards with words on them, that kind of thing. And that was a great relief to me. And we have a board that oversees it all. I would say that saying you're lucky is kind of a strange thing to say, but they're lucky that their children are born now, because there's so many programs in place now, and it's recognized that parents need help. You can't do it all by yourself, and the early intervention is there. It's so important. I think you're very fortunate in that respect. And mental retardation is recognized nowadays and not looked upon as being something to be ashamed of or something that's bad.
I think too that the fact that these individuals are out in the public and the public is acquainted with them. We have staff that come into our home and bring their own children, with our permission of course, when they're on duty. Their children are 2, 3, 4 years old. They just relate so well to the handicapped individuals and are not backward and reluctant to interact. They learn from day one that these are individuals as normal in most respects as you or I. They just have different attributes or different characteristics, and those children are going to grow up to be just as accepting as the mothers and fathers of individuals who are born that way.
But I would just say take advantage of what your board and what your county has to offer, and don't be afraid to check things out and see what they can offer for your child. Just don't keep them at home. Just go ahead and try to find out what services, and they would maybe, if the board doesn't know, they could probably find out what they could do for your child. I'll have people that will come up and say hi to Scott and I don't know who they are, but they know him. So it's just amazing, all the people that respond to him, and some of them are people that maybe volunteered with him years ago too, and so I just think that's a really good experience. He's brought a lot of people.
You're known as Scott's mother.
Scott's mom.
And you're Joey and Jessica's mother,
Yes.
and I'm Tony's mother.
Which is
I have
good.
no other.
Which is a good thing.